In this video, you will see material that may be considered inappropriate or sensitive for you, therefore discretion is advised. We begin with this family traveling to a small town located by a busy road, where the father is set to work as the new doctor for a local university. Upon their arrival, the girl named Ellie is already in trouble, swinging on a swing. The girl tells her parents that from up high she sees a road, and then the swing breaks. While the parents help the girl, they neglect the baby named Gage, who heads towards the dangerous road but is saved by a man named Hood. Lewis, the father, thanks him. And then Rachel asks the old man where that road leads. He tells them that he will share the story later. Later that night, Louis gets a huge scare because of his cat while he was watching the road. Then, Louis goes to see old Hood, who tells him that this road leads to the Pet Sematary, where pets have been hit by trucks that travel at high speed. The next day, the old man takes the family to the Pet Sematary. While they are there, he tells Rachel that most pets belong to children, and that they should get used to dealing with death from an early age, which Rachel seems to dislike. Later, the old man shows the girl where he buried his dog, which was also hit by a car, and tells her that this is the place where death speaks. The girl gets a little scared, and as they are leaving the thicket, they hear a voice. Later, the girl tells Louis that she doesn't want her cat to die. He tells her that it's not his decision, but rather the laws of God. The girl, a little sad, tells God that she should find her own cat and not take hers, as we see at night that the cat sleeps next to her. The next day, Louis, pressured by Rachel, promises that nothing will happen to the cat and that they will have it forever. A bit annoyed, he tells his partner that when something happens to the cat, she will have to explain it to Ellie, and he goes off a little upset to cut the cat's nails. Sometime later, he makes peace with his wife and goes to his first day of work. Once at the university, the doctor's first day starts off quite hectic as he is immediately tasked with attending to a man who was hit by one of the trucks passing at high speed. The man asks to be left alone to examine the body, and while Lewis closes the man's eyes, we see the guy wake up, splattering blood on his face. He also tells Lewis that the earth in the hearts of men is rocky and mentions his name. The man is quite frightened and asks how he knows his name, but the dying man only tells him that he will come back for him, and then goes completely still. One night, while the family is resting, Lewis wakes up and sees the deceased man standing at the door. He then turns to look at his wife, and when he turns back, the man is much closer to him. The man tells him to follow him and not to make him repeat it twice. Louis goes after the corpse and descends into the basement, where he encounters the corpse again, which places a hand on his shoulder. The corpse guides him along the strange path to the Pet Sematary in the midst of the fog. Once in the cemetery, the corpse tells him that this is where death speaks. The man says he wants to wake up, but the corpse shows him that he must head towards a strange light. However, Louis falls to the ground, asking for forgiveness and telling him that it is not his fault that the man has died, while the strange corpse is seen fading away. Then Louis wakes up again in his bed, but when he checks his feet, he realizes they are covered in dirt. The next day, he sees the file of the dead man, who was named Victor, and he throws it in the trash. Sometime later, Rachel goes to another place with the children, while Louis finds his cat dead, and old Hood offers his heartfelt condolences. Together, they collect the cat, and Louis says he will keep it in the garage and bury it tomorrow. The old man invites him to do it right away, and they head to the Pet Sematary together. Louis tells him he wants to bury it, but outside of that strange circle. The old man says he knows the right spot and guides him through the underbrush. However, when Louis tries to catch up to him, a branch breaks, and Louis falls rolling down. The old man helps him, and they continue through the forest. Louis hears strange sounds, but the old man tells him not to worry. They finally arrive at a strange place with gigantic symbols made of white stone. The old man tells Louis that it is the perfect spot to bury his daughter's cat, but he must do it himself. While the old man smokes a cigar, Louis tries to dig a hole in the ground, which is quite hard, but he eventually succeeds. He buries the cat and returns home late at night. While being near the house, Louis hears the phone ringing, and although he runs, he is unable to answer the call. The old man tells him not to tell his wife anything, and also repeats the phrase that the man said before asking. While Louis tries to return the call, the old man stays outside watching him in a rather suspicious manner. Louis is talking to his little girl who is asking him how her cat is, but Louis lies to her, telling her that he hasn't seen it. The next day, as Louis entered the house, he encountered the cat, which gave him a real scare. He then went out to feed it and was quite surprised to see that the cat was alive. He tried to check on the cat, but it scratched him hard on the face and ran away. Confused, Louis went in search of explanations from the old man, who told him that when he was a child, his dog was hit by a car, and that he buried it in the same place where he indicated Louis should bury his daughter's cat. He mentioned that, like Louis's cat, his dog also came back to life, although it didn't behave the same way. However, after some time, the dog died again, and this time he buried it in the pet cemetery. He said he did it so that Louis's daughter wouldn't feel what he had to feel as a child when he lost his dog, but that animals, when they come back, are not the same. In other words, the old man didn't want the girl to be without her cat, and he already knew the cat would return because he didn't want her to feel the same pain he felt as a child when he lost his dog. Sometime later, while Louis was taking a shower, he sees a rotten mouse fall from above. He realizes that it was the cat who threw it at him. The cat has a rather terrifying appearance with eyes that seem to glow. Moments later, Louis gathers his family, and the girl tells him that the cat smells really bad. Sometime later, the woman who does the family's laundry writes a note and then goes to the basement of the house. It is important to note that this woman had been complaining for some time about a stomachache. Moments later, at the funeral of Mrs. Rogers, as she was known, just asks Louis how the cat is doing and that they must take good care of it. Later that night, the girl asks if the lady will go to heaven, while Louis gives a response that is heard by Rachel. We see that the cat is also quite attentive to Louis, watching him with shining eyes. Rachel tells Louis that she is quite scared, saying that some memories about the death of a woman she was raising are coming back to her. She mentions that the woman did not just die from an illness, but that there was something strange surrounding the woman's death. She recounts how she tried to help her by hitting her back, thinking the woman was choking, but she couldn't do anything, and ultimately watched as the woman died in front of the attentive gaze of the other children, who believed that she had killed her. Louis calms her down a bit by telling her that she doesn't have to feel guilty since she was just an 8-year-old girl and was not capable of taking care of a sick person. Days later, the family is having fun outdoors while we see a truck approaching at high speed as the children are flying kites. Louis lets the boy continue with the kite on his own. He loses it and watches as the string unravels. Louis turns his back and the boy runs towards the road trying to catch the kite. When the old man warns them about the boy, Louis runs to try to reach him, but the truck hits him, and all that is seen is the boy's little shoe flying through the air and the truck overturned on the road. Sometime later, we see Louis heartbroken, looking at some memories of his son, while the old man tells him that Rachel has already fallen asleep. A little while later, the girl arrives, who also has a picture of her little brother by her side. The girl says that she will ask God to bring her brother back, and the old man tells her that it is impossible, while also telling Louis to take good care of his daughter, who needs him now more than ever. Later at the baby's burial, a man who appears to be the grandfather hits Louis, then a fight breaks out, and in the midst of it, they fall onto the coffin where the child is. Late at night, Louis takes the girl to rest. The girl asks him if she can have faith that her brother will return. Louis doesn't say much, he just closes the door and lets her sleep. When he arrives in his room, he finds the cat quite furious about his wife. The cat flies at Louis, who manages to dodge it. Then we see Jude enter the house while at the same time the cat quickly exits. The old man talks to Louis and tells him that he feels guilty about the death of his son and that he is contemplating the possibility of doing something, knowing that Louis is also considering that possibility. The old man also tells him that this is not the first time it has happened and that at the end of World War II, a man managed to do it, but the person who was revived did not return in a normal way. In other words, the old man wants to do with the boy what they did with the cat. He says that the person who was revived came back as a zombie, attacking other people, and that he, along with others, went to where the zombie was, revived his son, and set fire to the house where that person lived. However, that zombie managed to hold on to another person, and they died in the fire. The old man, filled with guilt, pounds the table quite angrily. The next day, Louis wakes up his wife and his little girl. She tells him that he must promise her that everything will be okay. Louis does so and is left quite pensive. Sometime later, we see Louis in the cemetery where they buried his little one. There, in the cemetery, he encounters the corpse that tormented him, which he saw on his first day of work. The corpse tells him that he just wants his son back, and that he is willing to do whatever it takes to achieve that. We are with little Ellie, who is screaming desperately, and when her mom arrives, she tells her that it is not a nightmare. Ellie says she saw a ghost, and that it is a ghost that is there to prevent people from doing bad things, and that it told her that her dad was going to do something very bad. The girl tells her that the ghost knows her father because it was with him when he left the world, possibly referring to the man who died on Louis' first day of work at the university. When the mother leaves the girl's room, she tries to remember the name of the ghost, and next to her, the man seems to help her remember and correct her pronunciation of the name. When the girl manages to recall something, she runs out while we see the abortion test with her head. Back where Louis is, he tries to dig up his son's casket while the woman calls for him. When he doesn't respond, the woman calls for the old man. Not receiving an answer, the woman says she is going to head back to the town, and the old man asks her not to do that. Returning to Louis, we see that he has just dug a rather deep hole in which he is even able to hide from a patrol that arrives at the scene. He then continues to finish it, and now we see the old man preparing to have a couple of beers while scolding himself. saying that he shouldn't have done it and now he must undo it. Back where Louis is, he takes his son's coffin out of the sea. He hugs it while telling it that everything will be okay, then wraps it in a white blanket. While a strange energy enters the house and takes hold of Rachel, she seems to return to when she was a child and cared for the woman who died. The woman tells her that with the help of her dead son, they will come back for her and stop her. But this was just a dream that the woman had while traveling. We also see that on that same journey, the corpse accompanies her. And even this corpse manages to make the next plane not allow her to leave. Back with Louis, he carries his son's dog in the darkness and takes it to the pet cemetery. He then walks the same path he took when he went to bury the cat, heading towards the strange light that comes from behind the roots. It even seems that some strange force is trying to prevent him from reaching his destination, as it knocks down some branches to block his way. Back with Rachel, the corpse continues to help her. Now with Louis, he keeps climbing and we see that from a pile of rocks, a voice like that of the grave emerges, along with a strange thing that tries to catch him. But Louis continues and finally reaches the strange circle where he buried the cat. Now with Rachel, mysteriously the tire of her car blows out, while in the background we see that the corpse continues to encourage her. She seems to hear it but then leaves the place quite confused. Back with Louis, he buried the body in the strange place, and upon returning home, he is greeted by the cat watching him from a corner. He collapses onto his bed, while at the same time we see a small hand emerging from between the rocks. In the mysterious cemetery, Rachel is helped by a truck driver who allows her to get in. While at the family's house, we see the little boy return to the room where his father is sleeping. He takes his father's medical bag, remembering that he is a doctor, and the little boy takes a surgical knife. At that very moment, we see the old man wake up and look at some small footprints entering his house. Quite confused, he also sees a toy fall, and in the background he hears the voice of a small child telling him that he wants to play with him. The old man goes up to the second floor, as the voice is coming from there. Once upstairs, the voice is much louder and much closer. The old man continues to search for it while taking a knife out of his pocket to defend himself. The old man seems to hear the voice coming from under the bed. As he approaches, we see that he is distracted by the cat. This distraction is taken advantage of by the small hand that emerges from under the bed, which cuts his tendon, then slashes his mouth so that the old man cannot scream, and subsequently grabs him by the neck, tearing out his trachea, causing the old man to bleed to death before the terrifying gaze of the cat. On the other hand, we see that Rachel arrives home, while the strange ghost tells her that he has come to the end of his journey. Accompanying her, Rachel hears her little son's voice coming from her neighbor's house. She tries to enter but is frightened by the cat that appears, licking its paw covered in blood. The woman enters the old man's house and hears voices like those from beyond the grave coming from the second floor. She climbs the stairs and from behind the door hears a voice calling her name. Upon entering, she encounters the woman who took care of her when she was 8 years old. The woman approaches her in a rather eerie manner, screaming that she will never be able to get out of bed while starting to laugh at her. The woman seems to faint, but when she opens her eyes, she finds herself face to face with her little son, who shows her a small surgical knife he brought for her. When the woman tries to pick him up, all we hear is the sound of the knife plunging in, and the woman screams. Once again, we are with Louis, who seems to be having nightmares. Upon waking, he sees his son's footprints on the floor and realizes that he also took his surgical knife. He hears his son's laughter and goes out to try to find him. Just then, he receives a call from his father-in-law, who wanted to make sure Rachel arrived safely. He also tells Louis that Ellie and his little daughter want to talk to their mother, but Louis tells him that he can't pass her the phone right now while he looks at the footprints, quite worried. Later, when he goes to the basement, he receives another call. This time, it is the voice of his little son, who tells him that they are at the old man's house playing with Rachel, and that they want him to come over. Before crossing the street, he prepares a syringe with some medication. At the entrance, he encounters his cat, to which he throws a piece of meat, and when the cat tries to eat it, he tells it to enjoy it while it can. He then takes the cat and injects the medication he had prepared in the syringe and places it next to the meat while the cat is left agonizing. He then picks it up to check that it is stiff while observing Rachel's bag and enters the old house, which now looks quite demonic with a green substance everywhere, surrounded by fog and a disgusting smell. He starts shouting his wife's name while he finds one of her shoes halfway up the stairs. He also hears his little son's voice laughing upstairs. He takes out another syringe he had prepared and goes towards where he hears the little voice, checks the bathtub, and finally arrives at the old man's room. He tries to look under the bed and finds the old man's corpse, which is missing part of its mouth. He then hears his son talking from above, and when he goes towards where he is, the corpse of his wife falls on him, hanging by a rope around her neck. Following this, his little son falls on him, biting him all over and trying to kill him with the scalpel, inflicting several wounds, even on his forehead. The man manages to get the little one off him and pull out the syringe. Then he calls the boy who approaches with the scalpel. The man grabs him and plunges the syringe into his neck while the boy cries out in pain. Then the little one walks away, telling his dad that it's not fair. And a few meters later he falls, making a gesture of disapproval while the father watches him fall asleep right next to his wife, who is still hanging. Subsequently, Louis fills the entire place with gasoline and sets it on fire, even burning the CIE of his own little one, but not before taking the C from his wife wrapped in a white sheet and leaving the place engulfed in flames. We see him encounter the stranger again, who speaks to him and says he is sorry for his family and for him, but not to make things worse. Louis seems to ignore him and even passes through him, continuing to carry his wife and heading perhaps to the old cemetery, intending to revive his wife in the midst of the storm. He finally returns home, but this time without the body of his wife, covered in wounds and blood everywhere. He leans against the fridge while the church bells ring midnight. As the man is there, he hears footsteps, looks towards the door, and sees a bloodied hand that seems to be decomposing. Then he sees a woman enter, carrying only one shoe. We see the clock strike midnight, and finally, Rachel appears, looking in an advanced state of decomposition, letting a disgusting fluid drip from one of her eyes. He embraces her, and they merge into a passionate kiss, while the woman picks up the knife from the table, and only the man's screams can be heard. And yes, this movie has a second part which I will upload tomorrow, so stay tuned to the channel. Remember to comment down below what you thought of this first part, as it helps YouTube recommend the video a little more. Now, thank you for watching. Like the video, subscribe by activating the bell, and don't forget to brush your teeth before going to bed.